Good
Hello.
morning, everyone. How are you doing? Doing the show so far? All right, so let's get started. So we have Adastra as our sponsor for one of the sponsor for this event today, and we have Lexi from Adastra who wants to introduce this great company to you, Lexi.
Hello. I'm Lexi. So I'm here from Adastra. Adastra is an organization that works to unlock the value of data for some of the top companies across Canada. We specialize in industry leading solutions and services across the data and AI and digital spectrums. We're a top Microsoft partner across Canada with gold specializations in data and analytics, the data platform, cloud modernization, AI visualization, um, everything cloud. That's our bread and butter. We've also won multiple impact awards multiple Microsoft Impact Awards over the last few years, including the Global Power BI Impact Award, which was really awesome for us. We have some of the top some of the top organizations across Canada as our clients, including top banks, top manufacturers, um, as well as a bunch of retail, energy, and public service organizations as well. So we have a table set up over there. Come and say hi. If you're new to your data and analytics career, we also have a really awesome program known as our Nova program. So this is a program, it's a full-time program. You get to learn from industry experts as well as work on projects at some of these awesome organizations. So thank you, everyone, and back to you.
Thank you, Lexi.
Thank you.
And they are hiring, by the way, like any other Microsoft partner. Yeah. All right, so I forgot to take my wireless mouse in the client side, so I will be a little bit slow with this mouse, and my apology for being a little bit slow today on this presentation. All right, so DevOps on Azure Data Platform. My name is Ehsan Eskandari. I am a Microsoft Azure MVP. I am an independent consultant uh, working on different area and vertical on Azure, from application modernization, data warehouse modernization, IoT, and also dynamic integration. And today, I'm super excited to be here and share my experience on DevOps, specifically on Azure Data Platform, with everybody in this room. First, I'd like to thank our sponsor, Microsoft, Hitachi, Adastra, and Chris Park. So thanks to our sponsors for all of the support for this particular event, which is, by the way, is a global event across the uh, different countries. And just skip a couple of slides, go to the community support. Thanks to our Toronto data professional community for putting this event together. That's the topic. And a little bit about myself. Uh, so I'm independent consultant. I also working with different Microsoft partner. Recently, this year, I'm working with Adastra on different data platform initiative with some of their high-profile client. Uh, at the same time, I work with Microsoft Learn as well. And what we do pretty much as a subject matter expert in the industry, helping Microsoft Learn to design, develop, and refresh some of the Azure certification. So 204, 220, 102, 203 are the certification that I had contribution, some online, some in Microsoft headquarters. And also, I'm a organizer for Metro Toronto.net user group and Toronto.net meetup. These are the oldest and the biggest Microsoft community in Toronto. And what we do, a lot of global event like global AI bootcamp, global DevOps bootcamp, global Azure bootcamp. Our next major global event is global AI bootcamp, and that's on March 4th here. So feel free to RSVP, and I hope to see you all over there. So that was about me. So let's just quickly get to know everyone in this room. Quickly, like a name and your role, so that I can gauge and drive the presentation to our target in this room. Awesome. So when you say data engineer, please say, are you like more on the development side or also on deployment side or operation? That's helped me uh, to where to deep dive more on the topics. Development side. Perfect. You? Awesome. You? Data analyst. Okay. Okay. Yeah. That's good. But on the data governance side, which we have something. So we start with, like any other project, we start with like Azure Landing Zone, and then move on to the data governance, and then data zone. And from there, drill down and deep dive on the different application type. You, sir? Data architect, business analyst. Yeah. Okay, that's good. The purpose here, the focus here is just Azure, just as a disclaimer. And you, Pooja? So for security, I'm preparing a talk for Global Azure Bootcamp. So security on Azure Data Platform, but that's perhaps in the next couple of months. Data engineer, you? BI developer, you? Business analyst? All right, so we have a wide range of audience here. So, but I feel most of our friends here are more on the data engineering side, which is fantastic. So let's quickly go to the agenda. So we start with Azure Landing Zone, and the reason for this particular talk is I present on Global Azure Bootcamp. I got some feedback from the room and from Microsoft, and I like to, for this particular presentation, start from nothing. Like you go with a client, there is nothing there, and maybe they have something like pay-as-you-go subscription like all of us, right? And at the very least, spend a couple of minutes, maybe 1 minute on some of those foundation to build any application, including data platform. So we start with Azure Landing Zone. What is Azure Landing Zone? What is Data Zone? And then we get into the infrastructure as a code. Very briefly, we are not going to do like a deep dive here. So we're going to talk about what is Terraform, what is Bicep, ARM template, quickly, and how to make a decision. We have a lot of architects on this room, and one of the major decision is, should I go with Terraform? Should I go with Bicep? ARM template, which one, right? So then we get into the Azure DevOps for some of our great product owners in this room, and also developer, source control, also DevOps people who do the CI/CD pipelines. And from there, we get into a couple of demos. So the rest would be all demo. I don't know how much time we have. I try to speak as fast as possible to high level give you what we are going to cover and also show all of the demos. Just disclaimer for Azure Databricks. Last time I deployed Azure Databricks was, I think, January, February. And I walk you through the pipeline. Hopefully, I remember the stuff from that time. But let's get started. All right. So first thing is, what is Azure Landing Zone? So we sometimes in the project, we see the customer has no clue in terms of the foundation, right? Any project start on Azure or any other cloud platform with foundation. And what foundation is, if we talk about, let's say, in a different, very simple analogy, is imagine there is a land and there is a builder, there is a developer, right? So what is the first process? The first step is for the developers in construction industry. They, they bring all of those heavy duty machine. They put all of the piping, electricity, all of the city services, right? And then the developer, the builder comes and they build a condo on top of that, right? So Azure Landing Zone pretty much is that foundation. So stuff like connectivity, stuff like identity, Active Directory, connectivity between on-prem data center to the cloud. What is the strategy? Are we going to do like site-to-site VPN? Are we going to with the express route? How we are going to have our different subscription? Like how we have different subscription, one for dev, one for UAT, one for production, one for, let's say, for identity, one for decommission, right? So let's say you have you start very small at the maybe 2, 3 months, you realize, oh, we made a mistake. You know what? Let's start all over again. So you need at some point to decommission some of your Azure subscriptions. So you have to have like some sort of managed group for this. And by the way, this is a Microsoft recommendation, and you don't need to take photo. I put all of the links here to the Microsoft Doc, which is a fantastic source of learning. And also, I'll provide some material for you to get into Microsoft Learn. They have great materials, and it's very easy to follow. You just need to spend some time. So the most important part about the Azure Landing Zone is that first day on the project, you either have an enterprise architect agreement with Microsoft, or you have a contract with one of Microsoft partners, CSP. So your CIO signed the contract, and then some of you perhaps architect have been on the call with those vendors, right? And then try to set up the Azure Landing Zone. So what they do, they send you an email as an admin, and then they set up the first Azure subscription. Once you have your Azure subscription, then you have expert people. There are specific people that their career is to build Azure Landing Zone. And then they get in touch with your team and your networking guys and operation and design all of this for you. So there are two approaches here. You can start very small, like whatever is the need for now or maybe next 6 months, right? And then build on top of that. Or you can take the other approach, which is the full-blown enterprise scale Azure Landing Zone. So this is, I tell you this much about the Azure Landing Zone. And from here, we move on to the next topic. Before I move on to the next topic, just remember this area, which is the landing zone, and the connectivity. So there are two specific area, the connectivity subscription, where you have all of your infrastructure for communicating from your local data center to Azure. Big corporation, most of the time they have SQL Server, Oracle on-prem, and they want to migrate to the cloud, right? So they don't take everything at one shot and put it on the cloud because it's very difficult, right? So what they do is they first start connecting to Azure, and then start building the workload to Azure. So that's where you need your connectivity subscription to put all of your networking services, like VPN or Express Route or DNS servers, and your hub here. And then you have your landing zone. And on the landing zone, then you have different type of application. And obviously, Azure DevOps is another portion of Azure landing zone. So pretty much creating service connection for different environments. So those are all can be a part of Azure landing zone. Depends on the person who is doing the Azure landing zone. Then on top of Azure landing zone, we have data management landing zone. When we're talking about data management landing zone, it is all about data governance. It is all about data catalog. It is all about master data, right? Someone was here from the governance. So pretty much here, we are talking about a product like Purview. We are talking about a product like Atacama, which is multi-cloud. So that's where you have your data management zone, and you put all of the data management and governance tool in place on the data management landing zone. And from there, you have finally data landing zone. Data landing zone is where you put all of your data application. There are different type of application type that we get into those in a minute. But this is most of pretty much the focus for our for our talk here. But all of our they call it data products. So as you can see here, for example, here you can put a batch application. A batch application, you have, let's say, ADF, you have Synapse. Well, you can have Synapse pipeline to eliminate the ADF, or Databricks. So these all comes to here. But you got the big picture, right? So first, Azure landing zone, then the data management zone, and then we have the data zone. So there are three application type in the context of a data platform according to Microsoft Doc. So the first type is data analytics and data science data application. So application for data analytics and data science might contain the service shown in this diagram. As you can see, we have a key vault, we have machine learning. On the machine learning includes cluster, compute, Synapse connection, and Databricks connection. So you can have one or both, depend on your scenario. You will have Synapse with both SQL dedicated pool, serverless pool, Spark pool as well. Cognitive service, Azure Search, Data Lake, and application inside, sometimes container registry. I haven't used a container registry on the data platform, at least. The second type of application is batch data application. So this contains all template for a batch data processing. Let's say you have a file to ingest, you have API to ingest, right? You pull data daily, weekly, or monthly from a government site, right? Or from a regulatory body. This is where they call it batch data application. Typical services that you may use here is a Key Vault, Data Factory, database Cosmos DB, or any other SQL type of database, and Synapse. And again, you can have Azure Databricks as well. With the Azure Databricks, you have both batch and streaming. But I don't know why Microsoft, like, they didn't put the Databricks here anyway. And surprisingly, last week they announced that for a Spark application, they recommend to move to the Azure Databricks, which is another surprise, by the way. Anyway, so getting to the last type is a streaming data application. For a streaming data application, again, you use a Key Vault, Event Hub, IoT Hub, a Stream Analytics, any sort of database, depends on uh, relational or non-relational, and also Synapse and Databricks as well, well, Azure Databricks. So now we know there are three types of application, and we are going to start our project. And we have the project manager and Mr. Architect. They want to start bringing a developer on board, right? So what they do, they need first Azure services. And what happened in a normal scenario is you don't have your Azure DevOps guy to provision all of services for you. So they go to Azure portal and click, 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 and provision the environment for our dev friend until our DevOps guys, provision the environment. So in order to provision the environment, the best practice is to go with infrastructure as a code. And that means you have repeatability. You can repeat your environment using the code, and that give you a lot of flexibility and eliminate a lot of unnecessary risk. In order to provision the environment, there are three choices. The first one is ARM template, which is native to Microsoft, but it's very nasty. It's JSON, very complicated JSON, and to be honest, I just run away. Uh, the second choice that came up from Microsoft, which is abstraction on top of ARM template, is Bicep. Bicep is a great choice, and Microsoft heavily invest on Bicep. What they did first was they uh, they they had a team, I think 2 years ago, to come up with Azure provider for Terraform. And from that moment, Microsoft tried to see what are the great features from Terraform. And at the same time, they start building the Bicep team, right? So Bicep team, pretty much what they do, they look at Terraform and they try to make it easier for infrastructure people to provision resource using Bicep language. So Bicep is you compile the Bicep, it gives you ARM template. So, but you don't need to deal with all of those issue and difficulty with ARM template. It's more readable. It's cleaner, and it's yeah. That this is very good. The only limitation that Bicep has is that it is good only for Azure. So you cannot deploy AWS or GCP with Bicep. There are a lot of great comparison between Terraform and Bicep. The only thing I would say is, based on my experience, I always go with two questions. So number one, is your organization is multi-cloud, or is it just Azure? And the second question is, how about your internal team? Like sometimes your internal team, they're very good with Terraform. Even though Azure is the only cloud in your organization, your team is Terraform. So go for Terraform, right? If your organization is multi-cloud and if there is no attachment to any technology stack, definitely go with Terraform. If it is Azure and your team are flexible and you have room for maneuver in terms of the learning, just go with Bicep. And let me see if I have some sample here just to show you all. All right. So these are some Terraform code. As you can see, I just want to show you uh, some sample with Terraform. So pretty much the way you want to shape your Terraform module is per each Azure services, you define a module like Key Vault, resource group, storage, Synapse, virtual network, Databricks, and then you define all of the module, and then on your main Terraform, on the root, then you pass parameter per each module. Let's say, remember the type of application that we looked before. Let's say a batch application. In your batch application, you need a key vault, you need a data lake, you need Synapse, right? So what you want to do is in your main Terraform, you just call the module for those particular Azure services, and then you have a Terraform variable per each environment. This is a de facto that most of the time we do. That's with the Terraform. And let me just see if I have a sample for Bicep as well. Okay, yeah. So same concept here with Bicep. This is a Bicep code, very similar to Terraform. What you want to do, again, you define your module. Let me just go to one of the modules just as an example. Evolve. As you can see, you just define your parameter at the top, and then you have a resource from the Microsoft.Key and then this is the API version that will deploy it for you. So pretty much you define your module here, and then you have a main bicep file, like Terraform, that you just call all of those modules. And then you have here a PowerShell. So you have a PowerShell file to pass the parameter per each module. You just initialize it, and then you call the Azure CLI to deploy your resource to your environment. So both are great choices, and interestingly, they are very similar, very similar. So if you know Terraform, switching to Bicep is just maybe less than a week. And by the way, you don't have to deal with all of those state file issue on Terraform. So back to our presentation. Any questions so far? Okay, back to presentation and the Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is a collection of services that helps whole development team to build different type of application. Uh, we have in this room, we have developer, we have product owner, we have architect, we have DevOps, we have people from operation. So most of the time, all of us work together on this environment. So we have Azure boards. That's where our business analyst, product owner, and non-technical, more on the project management side, with the help of the architect, they build the board. Usually you have option template to go with different project type, agile or different other. I think agile is the default template. So you define epic feature, user story, depends on the methodology, the terminology can change. And then you assign this task to your team. So that's where we use Azure board. Then we have Azure Repo. For the Azure Repo, as you know, we use it as a source control. Different type of methodology, we can use Azure repos for any type of code, from infrastructure, from the data side, from Python, Databricks, everything, your source code with the branching strategy, all is here. A lot of feature here, pull requests, limiting the code for to be merged with a specific list of reviewer. You have all of this flexibility. uh, you define the branching strategy, uh, a lot of flexibility. And then you have the Azure pipelines uh, to uh, to build and deploy your environment or your code in an automated fashion. You have a lot of flexibility here. Again, you can go with a classic or YAML one, and you have approval gate. All of those features there. Each each one of these is a topic. So that's I just try to move very fast. You have a test plan for your QA group. You define the testing strategy, test case, and it gives you a very nice report that you can on your weekly status report share with your stakeholder, and they will be super excited. You have Azure Artifact for also for putting some of the artifacts. So that's pretty much it from the slide. Now we can get into our demo. I want to see if I miss anything here. Uh, yes, and this is a Metro Toronto.NET user group. And as you can see, we have a global AI bootcamp here on March 4th. This will be quickly filled up. Feel free to RSVP if you're up for any learning on the AI side. All right, so this is our Azure environment, and a couple of demo here. Number one is a demo about the ADF. Uh, ADF is an orchestrator for orchestrating and running different tasks on the cloud. It has a great flexibility, and the other choice for ADF is Synapse pipeline. The only reason for our friend as an architect here, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that the flexibility that ADF gives you with a self-hosted integration runtime, that's the only feature that I have. I had another project with one of the biggest company in Canada. That's the only reason I choose to go with ADF, because there is a feature in self-hosted integration runtime for ADF, and that's where you can share your self-hosted integration runtime. And for those who doesn't know what is self-hosted integration runtime, is a machine, is an executable file, but this is on-prem. It helps you to pull data from a file or from a database in your data center, which is not on the cloud. So that's very important. And why this feature is super critical, because when we are talking about enterprise grade application, right? Like banks, like Husky, those big organization, number of machine matters, because if you go with, let's say, uh, one machine per each ADF, right? It would be, sometimes you ended up with maybe 100, 150 machine to manage on-prem. And that's a huge operation cost on your operation department and budget, right? So before getting to the demo, because I had that part and I forgot to mention on the agenda, one portion was self-hosted integration runtime. So with ADF, you have this flexibility that you can share your integration runtime. So you define one ADF as the hub, and all other ADF connect to link to this ADF for pulling data from on-prem. With Synapse, yesterday I had a call with Microsoft. So unfortunately, this feature still is in the backlog, and they don't have an ETA for that. So this is a critical decisioning point. So now let's move on to the services that we have here. In terms of Azure services on this dev environment, we have We have a key vault. We have a data lake. We have a database, and we have a ADF. We also have another resource group on UAT. And now, just go to my ADF. This is the ADF on dev. And by the way, for your naming convention, always, that's a part of Azure Landing Zone. Always go with a specific naming convention. If you don't have a specific naming convention, always go with Microsoft naming convention. That is the best practice. So this is our dev ADF. As you can see, this is the main branch. So I switch here to a feature branch. And by the way, I already set this up to be integrated with our Azure DevOps. And on the Azure DevOps, I already set up all of the service connection. And yes, manually, don't go with that automated way, because if you go manually and define your service principle on Azure, it gives you more flexibility in terms of the naming, description, everything else. So these are all behind the scene already done. So what I'm showing you is in a feature branch here. So still loading. Okay. So here I have two activity, one web, one copy data. And what I like to do is very simple change. Uh, First, let me go actually to the UAT. As you can see here on the UAT, yeah, this is our UAT. This is the same code, right? What I like to do is just go to this web, call it web. Just a minor change here. Say web, call. Okay. So what I would like to do is save all, saving to the Git repository. And the nice feature here is that I can create a pull request here without leaving this page. Then here I just uh, so remember I told you about the policy for each branch. You can make a couple of your team lead as a mandatory reviewer, right? And have a, let's say, minimum one approval. And you can set, nobody can approve their own code, right? So these are all great guardrails and contribute to a higher code quality and a lot of other feature. So here I say on. And one other thing was that you can also, uh, well, per each pull request, you can assign, attach it to a specific user story. So when your code goes to production, you know why this code changes there. What was the business case? What was the requirement number, right? So these are all you can add here. Just approve, and I complete. I don't want to delete the feature branch. Complete merge. Now here, what I would do, I would go to main branch, which is the collaborative branch. And here I would publish my my code. So with the ADF, and by the way, the same with the Synapse pipeline, behind the scenes ADF pipeline, you have a couple of branch. You have the main branch, which they call it collaborative branch. And then you have the publish branch. Collaborative branch is just some JSON file, but the publish branch is ARM template. Remember, infrastructure as a code. So when you publish your ADF code from your collaborative branch, which is the main branch, after approving the pull request, you need to publish this code to publish branch to generate the ARM template for your CI/CD pipeline to deploy this code to different environment like UAT. So right now, we are publishing the changes that we made on the main branch to the publish branch. And that what that gives us is a ARM template. From here, let me just go to our uh, CI/CD pipeline. This is our CI/CD pipeline for ADF. Yeah, okay. And what I need here is, let me first walk you through what we have here. So pretty much here, what you see, we have our artifact. Uh, Unable to contact the server. Okay. Let me just refresh the page. Maybe it's a connectivity issue. Okay. As you can see, this is connecting to our repo, but on the ADF publish branch, right? And then I have a different stage for each environment. Here you can go with YAML, which is the best practice, but sometimes your client, they find the classic mode more readable and easier for them. So in order to deploy any ADF code, what you need to do is there is a standard PowerShell script that Microsoft provided. So you run that PowerShell script before and after deploying your ARM template, right? So that's a pretty standard practice that we have. And here, as you can see, if I scroll down, these are the parameters. The only difference between pre and post is you flip these two variables for pre-deployment and deleted deployment. And this is our ARM template, which coming from the publish branch. And this is the different service connection. If I click here, you just define this service connection first. And in order to do that, you just go to your Azure environment, manually create the service principal. Then you go to your project setting, and under service connection, you create this service connection here by assigning that to this particular project. Now, if I create a release here, and for UAT, wait, and these labels can be, release name can be customized with a date and time and release number. So this is just a demo. So um, like this release 5 can be a timestamp for today's date, number of release. Um, these are all customizable. So as you can see, first it download the artifact. There we go. The first free script PowerShell completed. Now it's deploying the ARM template. That's our deployment name. So on Azure, if I go to the resource group, you see under the deployment list, this is one of them. And right now, what it does is push all of the ARM template to the ADF on UAT environment. Deployment is finished. Now it's just a post-deployment script, which will be finished in a second. And from here, I think I can, so this is our UAT. And if I duplicate this tab, hopefully by that time, this should be finished. Yeah, yes, deployment finished. There we go. So this was prior to the deployment. As you can see, it was Web 1. And here you see web call to commodity API, right? So this is how you deploy your code in a more automated way on different environment from ADF perspective. Let me quickly move to the other topic, which is SQL code. Okay. Okay, so for SQL code, what you need to do is you first create SQL Server data project. How many of you are familiar with source controlling your SQL code and SQL Server data project? Okay, perfect. Not a lot. So, of course. So, what for a SQL Server, including SQL Server, including Azure SQL Managed Service, and also the Synapse SQL dedicated tool. Let me just show you actually here. The key important thing is when you have another one here. So this is that particular project with one simple table, and you can see there is only one table. There is only one settings that you need to be mindful about, and that's target platform. So if you are SQL manage on Azure, this is your friend. If it's SQL Azure, this option, and if it is Synapse SQL dedicated tool, you just need to have this particular setting as part of your project type, right? So once you have this, you source control your code, and let's say here I have a SQL Server. My data is in worker 255. Let's just new requirement comes. Let's just make this, let's say 500, and let me just 500, and I commit code here, and after that I just move on to the pipeline. So there are two pipeline that you need to put in place. Number one is uh, to create a build artifact, which is a DAC pack from that SQL code, right? So you need to first create a pipeline to give you the DAC pack file. And let me just create one. I think that's our pipeline for DAC pack. I'm just running the pipeline as we are. So the pipeline first runs, and it gives you the DAC pack file. You can merge both with the YAML, but that's not the best practice. I'm telling you why. Because when somebody merge the code to your main branch and submit a pull request, you want to make sure their code has a successful build. even before your team lead take a look at the code, right? So for that, you need to separate these two pipelines. So first one, the build, to assign it, update your branch policy to create a build just before submitting the PR. And the other one is to publish the DAC pack to the actual SQL. So looks like we have a successful build. And with that, I think we can move on to run our other pipeline, which is publishing the file here. And that's it. I guess just create it. I am getting a lot of yellow, and I'm about to get a red card from organizer because of the time. One more time, connectivity issue. And just one more minute, and we are done. Like I said, we don't get to the Azure Databricks. I covered that on Global Azure Bootcamp. That's why I put this at the end for some of you that might already be in that talk. And I'm preparing another presentation on security on data platform application that will be on Global Azure Bootcamp. So another one on data platform if you are up for some sort of learning challenge. So what this pipeline is doing is take our DAC pack file and publish the DAC pack to our SQL server. And once this is done, let's see first if it's okay. So deployment started. Uh, this one. Okay, perfect. So now if I refresh this table, see this is 255. Connection lost. Fortunately, I lost my connection apparently. Um, but I can assure you that this time, let's just give it a try. Okay, that's why. That's the firewall. Last thing, while I'm adding the firewall here, the last topic that I was going to cover was the self-hosted Azure DevOps agent. Sometimes you may have a private link for your, yep, and yes. So, yeah, I'm getting a red card from the organizer. If you have any questions, please feel free to come here, please. I'm giving the floor to next speaker. And this is our last, yeah, this is 500. So deployment was successful. If you have any question, I will be at Adastra desk. Come and see me for any other question for Databricks and also self-hosted deployment agent, which is we need for any private link deployment. Thank you so much for being here. Have a great day, guys.